Welcome, sleepy traveler. You've arrived at a quiet space made just for you. My name is Valarie, and I am here to guide you gently into rest, to help ease your mind, soften your body, and drift you toward a peaceful, uninterrupted sleep. Whether your day was long or your thoughts feel a little too loud tonight, let this be your permission to slow down, to breathe, and to simply be. There's nothing more to do now. Just allow my voice to be your guide as we begin this gentle journey toward deep, nourishing rest. If you're new here, subscribe for sleep content like this, and like this video if you find it enjoyable. Let's begin. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it out gently, as if the air itself is carrying away the weight of your day. Feel the soft rhythm of your breathing. Inhale peace and exhale any tension that lingers. Your body knows how to let go. Notice the surface beneath you. It is holding you completely, without you needing to do a thing. Allow yourself to sink a little deeper into its support. Every muscle, every joint is safe to soften now. You are fully supported, fully at ease. Bring your attention to your face. Smooth your forehead, letting go of the day's expressions. Your eyebrows and eyelids become heavy and calm. Release the tiny muscles around your eyes. Let your cheeks soften and your jaw unclench. Your lips part slightly, your tongue resting gently. Your entire face is now peaceful and relaxed. Take another slow breath and notice your neck and shoulders. They have worked hard today. Let them release their weight, dropping naturally into stillness. A gentle warmth spreads through your shoulders and upper arms. Your elbows, forearms, and wrists soften. Even your hands and fingers loosen completely. Your chest rises and falls effortlessly. Each inhale brings in calm. Each exhale releases what you no longer need. Your heartbeat is steady and soothing. Its gentle rhythm lulls you toward deeper rest. Shift your attention to your stomach and lower back. Let your belly relax completely, soft and free. Your lower back sinks into the support beneath you. From your shoulders to your hips, every muscle loosens. Bring this feeling of ease into your hips and thighs. Your legs are heavy and warm, melting into stillness. Your knees, calves, and shins soften with every breath. Your ankles and feet relax, free from all effort. Even your toes feel soft and quiet. From the top of your head to the tips of your toes, your body is resting in harmony. You are safe, supported, and deeply calm. Now imagine a soft golden light above your head. It glows gently, warm and soothing like a quiet sunrise. The light slowly drifts down, touching the crown of your head. Where it touches, it leaves a wave of relaxation. The golden light flows across your forehead and temples. Down over your closed eyes and cheeks. It eases your jaw and fills your face with peace. The light moves into your neck and shoulders. Releasing every bit of tightness as it travels. It glides through your arms, wrists, and hands, leaving a soft, tingling calm in its wake. The light reaches your chest and heart, filling you with warmth, safety, and comfort. It moves with your breath, flowing through your lungs and ribs. Your entire upper body glows with relaxation. The golden glow drifts to your belly and lower back, softening every muscle as it moves. It flows into your hips, thighs, and knees, down to your calves, ankles, and all the way to your toes. Your whole body is cocooned in golden light. Take a deep, slow breath and exhale softly, sinking even deeper into rest. Your body is heavy and warm. Your mind is light and free. Now picture yourself lying under a vast starry sky. The air is cool and refreshing, carrying the scent of night blossoms. The ground beneath you is soft and welcoming. Above you, the first stars twinkle gently in the dark. One by one, more appear, filling the sky with light. A crescent moon rises, bathing the world in silver. Its glow feels protective, like a quiet guardian watching over you. Somewhere nearby, a gentle stream trickles over smooth stones. Its sound is steady and soothing, nature's own lullaby. A soft breeze brushes your skin, carrying whispers of leaves and the distant hum of crickets. The world around you is calm and safe. You are a part of this peaceful night, held in its embrace. If a thought comes to your mind, imagine it as a soft cloud. It drifts across the open sky of your awareness, moving slowly and fading gently from view. You do not need to hold or follow any thought. You are free to simply rest. Take another long, slow inhale and a soft, gentle exhale. Feel how deeply your body has surrendered. You are safe, supported, and ready for sleep. You are floating now in this gentle stillness. Drifting effortlessly toward dreams. There's nothing left to do, only to let go and embrace this night of rest. Good night. Rest deeply and enjoy tonight's bedtime story. Some buildings hold their silence like a wall. This one listens like a friend. By the third week, I had learned the lighthouse's moods. The way the stairs complained in the morning, the way the lantern glass looked smug on a sunny day, the particular hiss the stove made before it agreed to boil water. I'd also learned my own schedule here. Work in the daylight, words at night. It wasn't something I had planned. It simply happened, the way routines often do when you stop forcing them. Every evening after Matteo left, boots crunching back down the path, his voice tossed over his shoulder with some comment about the wind being extra gossipy tonight, I'd light the lantern, pull the book toward me, and read. Sometimes I read in silence. Sometimes I murmured the sentences aloud, testing how they felt in the air again. And sometimes, when one of them lifted its head toward me like a dog hoping for a hand on the neck, I'd pick up the pencil and answer. To the sailor who wrote in 1972 that you couldn't remember the shape of your daughter's hands, I wrote one fog-wrapped Tuesday. I hope you've seen them again, even if only in someone else's. To the honeymooners of 1988, I scribbled on a day when the sea was the exact color of their described oyster silk dress. You wrote that you couldn't imagine ever arguing here. I hope you learned that love can survive even the arguments. To the daughter in 2001 who scattered her father's ashes in the cove, I added on a still morning. You said the tide took him without hesitation. I hope you've let the tide take some of your grief too. The replies weren't meant to fix anything. They were offerings, the way you leave shells on a windowsill for no other reason than they're too beautiful to be hidden away. In giving them, I was finding a strange kind of mending. Like every sentence I wrote to someone else was quietly stitching something inside me. One night, as I turned a page with the care you'd use to wake a sleeping child, a thin slip of paper slid out from the spine and floated to the floor. I bent to pick it up, my pulse pricking as if I'd just been handed a secret on purpose. It wasn't a page from the book. It was loose leaf, folded twice, edges worn soft. The pencil handwriting leaned hard to the right, as though it had been written quickly or under a pressure heavier than the writer could name. It read, I don't know if I'm coming back to stay or to say goodbye. Either way, I'm bringing the answer. I think the light will know what to do with it. Maybe it's the kind of decision that belongs to a cliff's edge. No signature, no date. Just that, ending mid-thought, as if the writer had been interrupted, or had changed their mind before the last sentence could escape. I read it 3 times before setting it on the table, my fingers resting on the crease like I could keep the ink from cooling. Something about it lodged in my chest, the certainty that they were coming, paired with the uncertainty of why. It didn't read like a note abandoned by accident. It read like something meant to be found later, when the right eyes were ready. The light will know what to do with it. I glanced up toward the stairs. Even in the dark, I could feel the lantern room above me, a silent keeper, waiting. I didn't write a reply to the letter that night. I sat with it, letting it breathe in the quiet, the fog's soft fingers slipping under the door. My mind kept painting possibilities. A proposal, a farewell, a decision to live or to leave. Each version was a different weight in my palm. By morning, the note was still there. I slid it gently between the pages of the book, marking it with a scrap of ribbon so I could return to it. It was the same day I decided to start the garden. It wasn't anything grand, just a thin strip of dirt along the side of the lighthouse where the wind was kinder. I'd been carrying a packet of wildflower seeds in my bag since leaving the city. Back then, they'd been more of a daydream than a plan. Something I'd bought during a grocery run because the packet showed a meadow so riotously alive it made my tired chest ache. Mateo found me kneeling in the dirt that afternoon, gloveless, hair whipped across my mouth, trying to dig a respectable hole with a bent trowel I'd found in the storage trunk. "You planting an orchard?" he teased, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Just trying to give the front door a reason to smile," I said, brushing soil from my hands. He set the mugs on the step and crouched beside me, watching as I pressed the seeds into the earth. "You know the wind here has opinions, right?" "Let it," I said. "I'm planting stubborn ones." It felt almost ceremonial, the way I covered the seeds, patted the earth flat, and sat back on my heels. Something about putting life in the ground beside a place built to endure storms made the whole place feel less abandoned, like I'd nudged it a little closer to alive. That evening, the air smelled faintly of earth instead of only salt. I opened the guest book to the ribbon-marked page and, without overthinking, wrote beneath the unfinished letter, "If you brought your answer, the light is still here. So am I." The moment the pencil left the paper, I felt it. A steadying, like I'd finally stepped onto the right path after weeks of wandering close to it. The replies kept coming in the days that followed, each one a conversation across time. And with every reply, I felt less like a visitor in the lighthouse and more like one of its moving parts. A gear in the slow, patient clockwork of keeping watch. The book was listening. The walls were listening. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally learning to listen to myself. I didn't expect the past to walk up the path in a wool coat and a careful smile. But there he was, breath turned to smoke in the morning chill, one hand in his pocket like he was negotiating with his courage. The light had woken gray, the kind of clean, promising gray that makes edges look honest. I'd been outside with a dented watering can, tipping yesterday's collected rain across the thin strip of soil beside the door. The first green tips had appeared, just the shyest commas of life, but even that felt like a proclamation. The seeds I'd pressed into the ground had kept their promise in secret. Now they were practicing how to be visible. I heard boots and looked up. He was maybe mid-60s, thick hair gone to winter, a face that had been handsome and decided to be kind instead. He paused a few steps from me, squinting as if the lighthouse were answering a question he hadn't said out loud. "Morning," he said. His voice had the gravel of coastal men who've stored weather in their throats. "Morning," I echoed, setting the watering can down. "We don't open because we're not closed," I added, my usual joke, which was also true of a place that had never learned to be one thing at a time. "But you're welcome." He smiled, brief and crooked, like a postcard from a younger man. "Saw the notice in town about the restoration. Figured I'd come see if the old bones still hold." "They do," I said, patting the wall. Stubbornly. He glanced at the small garden patch. "You're giving it something pretty to look at while it waits for the rest of us." "That's the hope," I said. "Wildflowers are better at patience than people." He nodded like he knew that from experience. Then he took 2 slow steps closer and put his hand on the door frame, palms splayed. "Some people touch a lighthouse the way others touch an altar." He was one of those people. "I'm Erica," I offered. "Jonah," he said, and then, as if to clarify something he wasn't asked, added, "Haven't been up here since I was 20. "Then welcome back," I said, meaning it more than a greeter is supposed to. We went inside, the interior cool enough to suggest its own weather. The lantern on the table had yet to be lit. Morning didn't need it, but the room had taken on a habit of brightness, as if all the small flames I'd set down in words had learned to glow even without wicks. Jonah took the space in quietly. The stove, the work table, the spiral staircase, the shelf where the rusted lanterns had been rearranged into a less mournful quorum. He noticed the guest book as if it had called his name. People do that here. They move toward it with a certainty that seems older than their feet. I felt it before I knew it, a flirt of recognition like static. My mind leapt, unhelpfully organized. 1968, the letter that never came. Or 1972, the sailor who forgot the shape of his daughter's hands. Or 1994, the almost wedding with gulls for witnesses. The book is a room full of years. Any of them could be his. "Is that?" he asked, stopping himself as if to give me the chance to say no, to protect a magic he hadn't earned yet. "It is," I said. "Guests of the light, since whenever a guest decided the light should have a book." He reached for it as carefully as men of his age reach for newborns, competent, gentle, highly aware of their own strength. He brushed the cover with his fingertips and then opened to the middle like he'd been told long ago to trust the book to take him where he needed to go. The pages fell in one clean breath to a place that made his face change. "Ah," he said softly, as people do when they meet themselves in the wild. He didn't sit. He stood with the book tilted, scanning, and then his mouth shaped a small, private "Oh." He swallowed. He went still. "Do you need the chair?" I asked, keeping my voice level in case the answer was yes. He shook his head, and the motion looked like a man saving something for later. "I wrote this," he said, tapping the top of the page with a knuckle. "November 1968. My God." His eyes skimmed again. "It's mine, all of it." The entry he'd found, my pulse had guessed it, was the single line that had knocked the breath from me weeks ago. "I am waiting for a letter that isn't coming." He was the one who had written the rest of it. The bit about how waiting for a letter isn't the same as waiting for a person, how imagination can turn into a kind of cruelty. I could see the young man inside the older one, the impatience, the injured pride, the boy's tough gentleness he'd tried to wear like armor and then like skin. He drew a breath and let it out with an audible, almost comical care. "I was 20, he said, as if defending himself against charges. "My Elena left for Boston. She said she needed a year. I told myself she'd write. I told myself I'd be the sort of man who would allow the letter to arrive without begging for it." He glanced at me with a rueful smile that made him briefly 30 again. "I was not that sort of man." "You came here instead," I said. "I came here because I'd been here as a boy," he said. "My uncle did repairs for the town. I knew the light. I figured it would look at me and decide what was wrong with me. It didn't. It just listened." He flipped the page carefully, confirming the rest of his own words as if to ground himself in evidence. When his eyes slid down, they caught on my reply, the one written on that fog-hung night when the world had narrowed to the breath of paper and the bell of the sea. To the one who was waiting for a letter that never came, "I'm here now, and I hope you found peace." He read it once, twice. The second time, something in his jaw gave way. When he lifted a hand to his face, it shook. An old trembling, not fragile, but earned. He didn't try to hide it. The gesture, thumb sweeping quickly under an eye, was the universal habit of men not taught young enough how to weep publicly, but forced into it anyway by the soft insistence of truth. He started, then stopped. He closed the book gently and set his palm on it, as if checking for a pulse. "I never came back," he said without looking at me. "Not once. I didn't want to find out what kind of man I'd been." The stove ticked, quietly settling. The sea did its old rehearsal at the cliff. I waited because the book has been teaching me how. "I married someone else," Jonah said after a moment, still in that voice of carefully chosen gravel. "Jillian. We had years, good ones. Life is full, that's the truth. But when you're 20, the first epic feels like the only one." Elena wrote eventually. The letter came. It was brief. She said she had fallen in love with Boston itself, which was a way of telling me I had lost to a city. I loved Jillian. She died 5 years ago. I don't say that for pity, He tapped the book again, affectionate. I want you to know that sometimes the letter does come and it still says no. I nodded. It felt like a ceremony. Two people in a round room telling the old house that life had happened as it tends to. He looked up at me finally and found my face. His eyes were the blue of evenings that refuse to be night. "Did you write this?" he asked, hand on my sentence. "I did." "And you're you?" "As far as I know," I said. I got tired of waiting for my own letter from a life that wasn't answering. I came here I gestured, inadequate. To keep the light from getting lonelier. Something eased in him. "Well," he said, the word a smile, "you've done it a kindness." He opened the book again and read my sentence a third time, as if the repetition might turn it into a prayer or a pill. He nodded to it, not to me, then closed the cover softly and held the book against his chest. The pose was so exact to the way I sometimes hold it that I felt my ribs recognize the gesture. "I was afraid to come back," he admitted, voice lower. "It's silly, I know that. But this place—" He glanced up toward the lantern room, the spiral of stairs, the hard, beautiful geometry of the lens. "It keeps you honest. I didn't want to see myself like that, not until today." His eyes flicked to the door, to the sliver of garden poking green at the horizon. "I saw your flowers and thought, all right then. If the door can bloom, maybe I can be brave enough not to pretend anymore." I wanted to say something formal and generous. Instead, what came out was simple. "I'm glad you're here." He laughed, a soft bark. "Me too," he said, against my better habits. We sat. I made tea, because coffee felt too declarative. The kettle argued like always and then relented. I poured into mugs that did not match, one the scandalized blue, one a chipped white with a fading lighthouse painted in kindergarten strokes. He wrapped his hands around his mug and, without fuss, allowed himself to be a person who had come to be gentled. "Were you ever 20 here?" he asked, after the first mutual sip had consecrated the room. "I'm 29 here," I said. "But I've been 20 inside a lot of rooms that demanded more than I knew how to offer. I came because I was tired of being good at drowning." He winced and nodded like a person who had once tied a rock to his own ankle and called it responsibility. "Some of us drown politely," he said. "Makes less mess." We both smiled. The sea behaved itself, the wind did not. He turned the conversation to the restoration easily, as if giving me a rest. I told him about Matteo and the council, and the electrician wizard whose schedule was a constellation of maybes. I told him about the railing, about how the lantern glass looked smug after a good clean, about the day we discovered the blank guest book in the trunk and decided not to claim it for ourselves. I told him about the teenagers who'd drawn cats and mercy in the margins, the mother who had added, "I love you" beneath it like a cure. I didn't tell him about the note tucked between the pages, the unfinished letter about coming back with an answer. That felt like a secret with its own itinerary, but I thought about it, sitting there with Jonah, the past embodied in a coat that smelled faintly of cedar and bay. When he had drained his mug and been allowed silence long enough to not feel obliged to fill it, he set the cup down with a careful clink and stood. He went to the book once more and opened it to his page. This time he didn't read. He just rested his fingers along the edge like a man taking a pulse again, and then he looked at my sentence a last time. "The lighthouse finally wrote back," he said. It landed between us like an oar onto the floorboards of a small boat, solid, useful. I felt it in my chest. I felt it in the room. The walls have learned to accept a compliment on behalf of those who keep them. They did so now with a quiet expansion, the exact architectural equivalent of taking a deep breath. "Thank you," he added, and he made it the kind of thank you people don't say in grocery stores. He made it a thank you built from years of not being ready to say it. I didn't know I needed to know that boy was still inside me and that it's all right we didn't get what we asked for. I couldn't find a good speech. I settled for the truth. "The replies aren't just for the past," I said. "Turns out they're also for the living." He smiled, a whole face smile that brightened his winter hair with an old summer. "A lighthouse that writes back," he said again, amused now. "Who would have thought?" "I think," I offered, "the light has been answering all along. We just didn't leave enough space to hear it." We didn't touch. The room had already done the necessary closeness. He put the book back meticulously, as men taught to use their hands do. I walked him to the door. The day had tilted into better light. The water glittered at a respectful distance, like a guest behaving impeccably after being asked to leave once. He paused on the threshold and looked at the thin strip of garden, at the commas of green practicing their sentences. "What'd you plant?" he asked. "Cosmos and cornflowers," I said. "Something that will sway but not surrender. You'll get pinks and blues." He peered, pleased to know something useful. "Years ago, Jillian planted foxgloves by our door. I hated them, thought they were bossy. Then she died, and the next summer I couldn't get rid of them and was grateful for their bossing." "Maybe that's the deal," I said. "We plant something we think we're choosing, and then it chooses us." He laughed again, the gravel turning briefly to bells. "I'll come back," he said, and made it a vow only to himself. "Maybe bring a foxglove for this door if the wind will allow it. I'll make it mind its manners," I promised. And he nodded, as if satisfied with the kind of person I was to say such a thing. He started down the path. then turned back as if the cliff had remembered one more thing. Elena had handwriting like rope, he said. Braided. If you find a page like that, if you ever read her here, tell her I got old and was mostly good at it. I will, I said, without knowing if I could. Sometimes you accept a task from a stranger because you don't know yet how large it is. He lifted a hand, pocketed his other, and walked down into the particular light people carry when their past has been returned to them in a kinder key. I watched until the path flicked him into town. When the wind had finished saying his name to itself, I went back inside. The book lay with its own modest gravitas on the table. I touched the cover. I opened it to our page and read our little duet again. My sentence, then his declaration about the lighthouse finally writing back. I felt the urge to add a line, to narrate the moment into permanence, but I didn't. It already was permanent in the way that matters here. It had been said aloud to the listening walls. This place keeps those too. Instead, I turned to the ribbon and took out the folded, unfinished note, the one from no year, no name, promising a return with an answer. I smoothed it on the table, the crease memorized already by my hands. The timing of Jonah's arrival made the note feel hotter, as if proximity had turned it into a live coal. I read it again, then again, until the single paragraph felt like a room I could walk around in blind. I don't know if I'm coming back to stay or to say goodbye. Either way, I'm bringing the answer. I think the light will know what to do with it. I breathed with it. The day had gone generous. The stove clicked. The water rehearsed its vowels, and I realized, quiet, decisive, that I had been waiting too, not for a letter, but for the proof that my replies weren't only ceremony. Today, Jonah had brought that proof in his winter hair and his careful smile. I carried the note upstairs to the lantern room. The glass had that smug shine it got after a wipe, pleased with its own clarity. I stood with the note and looked at the world in its round. The boats like commas, the horizon like a sentence that refused to end prematurely. I held the note up. It wasn't a prayer. It wasn't a demand. It was a small offering, the way you show a child a shell you found and wait for them to gasp. "I'll be here," I told the lens, and my voice echoed in a tidy, affectionate way. "If they bring the answer, I'll be here." The wind pressed its face to the glass. The room felt like the anchor in a pocket watch. When I came down, I lit the table lantern, though noon was still bright, because there are days when you allow yourself a little unnecessary flame. I took the pencil and wrote beneath someone else's old, steady words, this time under a 1988 couple who had written, in newlywed joy, that they couldn't imagine ever arguing here. "Sometimes," I wrote, "the argument is the way you find your way back to each other. The light reaches the rocks by colliding with the dark first." I closed the book. I went to the door. The garden's tiny commas had added 2 more exclamation points while I'd been upstairs. Ridiculous, unscientific, immediate life. I knelt without thinking and pressed my finger into the soil to make room for a new seed. I didn't know if it would take. That was never the point. The point was the ceremonial push of hope into dirt, the tenderness of giving the wind something to gossip about besides our mistakes. In the late afternoon, Matteo arrived with a box of brass screws and a lopsided grin. "Council says yes to the bench by the south window," he announced, triumphant. After 45 minutes of arguing about whether benches encourage loitering and whether loitering is just sitting without a purpose. "Isn't that called resting?" I said. "Depends on who's doing it," he said, and then peered at my face the way he peers at a bolt that might strip if coaxed too hard. "You look like you've seen a ghost you'd invite for tea." "A visitor," I said. "Jonah. He wrote an entry in 1968. He came back today." And we were both people, and it was enough. I hesitated, then added, "He read my reply. He said it felt like the lighthouse wrote back." Matteo leaned against the door frame and let his head touch the wood. "That'll do," he said into the grain. "That'll do nicely." We put the screws into places screws had wanted to be for years. The work was close and specific, the way good kindness is. When the bench was set and the sun had decided on gold for the evening's theme, we dragged it near the south window and sat on it like 2 mechanics admiring a newly coherent engine. He glanced at the garden. "They're showing off," he said of the green commas. "Let them," I said. "They've earned it." We didn't light the lantern. The day didn't need it. But the room had that new habit of brightness I couldn't help noticing, born not of sunlight, but of purpose. Jonah's words had joined the others in their ongoing work. The replies were not only for the pages that made them necessary, they were for the hands and mouths still alive, for Jonah in his winter coat, for the teenager drawing cats, for the mother writing "I love you" like a rope across a dropped bridge, for Matteo, who listens to wind and screws, for me, who came here because I didn't know how else to be a person without dissolving. As the sky set itself on slow fire and then politely put itself out, I went to the table one more time. I didn't write anything. I just placed my palm on the cover and felt the book's quiet heat rising into my hand. "Thank you for listening," I said, "because sometimes you have to say it aloud to keep the magic from getting shy." The ocean answered in its native language. The lighthouse didn't speak because it doesn't have to. It did what it always does. It held, it watched, it kept. And in the keeping it taught me, as surely as any teacher with chalk and a lesson plan, that the past will come when it's ready. The living will come when they're brave. and the little seeds you tuck into the world will push their tiny faces up into light the first chance they get. The next morning, when I stepped outside with the watering can, a single bold green stem had straightened itself taller than the rest. I touched it with one finger like you touch a miracle you don't want to scare. The wind leaned in, curious. I smiled, and for the first time since my life broke and I came here to stand inside its quiet, I felt a confidence I didn't need to narrate. If he comes back with the foxglove, I thought, there will be room. If the note's writer returns with the answer, there will be light. If no one comes at all for a week and the only new words are my own, there will still be listening. Some places hold their silence like a wall. This one listens like a friend. And that morning, with wet soil under my nails and the book breathing on the table and the bench ready for strangers to loiter at last, I realized the simplest truth the lighthouse had been making all along. The listening is the light. The replies are the beam. And every time we speak back, across years or inches, to someone who braved a page, we keep the coast from being lonely. I used to think light was a thing you switched on. Now I know it's also a thing you answer. Word didn't so much spread as it drifted, like fog moving through town, curling under doors, settling on shoulders. The phrase, "the lighthouse that writes back," began as a joke at the bakery. Ada said it first while slipping me an extra pastry, her voice pitched conspiratorial like we were planning a heist. Then the barista at the cafe used it, and the councilwoman who always wore a red scarf said it at a meeting with a shrug that meant, well, why not? A week later, I heard it from two college kids in thrifted jackets as they walked the cliff path, and one of them said, "That's the place I told you about," as if the lighthouse were a person he wanted his friend to meet. People came, not in a parade, not in a rush, more like the tide, arriving with their own rhythms, leaving something small behind and taking something small away. Some stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping in. Some headed straight to the table like they'd been practicing this all their lives. A fisherman I'd seen around town came one morning before the sun shook itself awake. He smelled of diesel and salt and a clean, hard-working kind of tired. He wrote 4 lines and drew a boat with a belly too full. Then he stared at what he'd written like a man who'd forgotten his own handwriting. He didn't ask me to reply. He left knowing I would. A school bus came on a Tuesday with a teacher named Miss Doll who looked like she carried a rainstorm and a rainbow in her tote bag. The kids were good in the particular way of kids who understand sacred spaces without having the word for it. One boy whispered to me, "Is it true?" And I asked him what part. "The writing back," he said, eyes too big for his worry. "It is," I told him. He nodded, thinking. He wrote, "Today I didn't cry at school," and then drew a square around it as if to keep it safe. Miss Dahl wrote, "I am trying hard to do right by them," and I added quietly beneath her entry, "I can tell." Sometimes travelers stumbled in when the weather turned on them. A couple from Nebraska soaked through to their bones. They left a note that said, "The ocean is louder than our arguments and we're grateful." And I poured cocoa into 2 chipped mugs and wrote, "May your quiet be as strong as your storm." A woman with a guidebook wrote about her grandmother's kitchen in Maine and cried like it was legal to do so. A teenager with pink hair put down a lyric from a song I didn't know, and then, sheepish, added, "I want to be kinder than I was last year." It felt like watching people hand their hearts to a room and see the room hand them back just slightly lighter. Matteo took to calling me the keeper of replies, which made me roll my eyes and feel seen in the same breath. He installed a lock on the door that didn't stick, and a bell that made a sound like a spoon tapping a glass. The gentlest kind of announcement. He brought a carpenter on a blustery afternoon, and together they built a slim display case along the north wall out of reclaimed wood that felt right beneath the hand. "For the old book," Matteo said, sanding the edge like he was courting it, "and for the person who needs to know their words won't go wandering." The garden at the door kept its small, insistent promises. First the tips, then the leaves, then the thin cheeks of buds. One evening I came up the path and nearly tripped over a foxglove planted carefully at the end of the row. Tall, unapologetic, the same bossy purple Jonah had described. No note. I didn't need one. I touched the stem with 2 fingers and said, "Thank you," into the wind, which always passes on your messages if your requests are humble enough. That night I opened the guest book to our page, Jonah's lonely 20, my fog night reply, his simple blessing that the lighthouse had written back, and felt something in me finish mending in a place so deep I'd stopped looking for it. I added nothing. Not all healing wants narration. Some of it wants silence and the sound of paper breathing on the table. I had changed in ways even my old self would recognize. The edges that used to spark like exposed wires were smoothed with ordinary work. My days had depth instead of noise. I woke in the attic apartment above the bakery to the small symphony of people preparing bread, the hum, the low conversation, the clank of trays, and I felt like a citizen of a life rather than a consumer of it. I was not cured of everything. I don't believe in that word anymore, but I was rooted. The lighthouse gave me a place to plant sentences and seeds. Both took. People began asking if we were open, as if there were hours for the kind of listening we were doing. I put a sign on the door anyway, because people like instructions. Come in when the door is ajar. If it's shut, knock soft. The sea will answer first. I'll be right behind it. The council printed postcards to raise funds, each one with a different line from the book, cleared by those who signed their names. The cafe set out a small tin that read, On the days you can't say it out loud, say it here, and handed me folded slips now and then like smuggled goods. I'd bring them to the lighthouse and tuck them gently between the pages. When I had the right words, I wrote back. When I didn't, I underlined the line that needed a second heartbeat and let that be enough. The unfinished letter, the one promising a return with the answer, became a tide in me. I carried it upstairs to the lantern room on mornings when the horizon looked stern, and I read it by the smug glass on afternoons when the water lay there pretending to be harmless. It changed, the way sentences can change when you move them through different light. Some days it sounded like courage. Some days it sounded like goodbye. I didn't know which version of its writer would walk through the door. I only knew I was becoming the person who would be steady when they did. The first time I called the place "we" out loud, I was sweeping sand from the corners. "We're getting there," I told the room, and didn't feel silly. It answered by being itself, a structure that holds, a lens that remembers, a staircase that insists on one step at a time. I had gone from burned out and untethered to that word I once suspected belonged only to people who owned houses or raised children. Rooted. My roots were thin and stubborn and saltwater tolerant. They tapped into community and into whatever aquifer of old words and braveries runs beneath towns that take care of one another. On a Saturday that wore the kind of blue that makes painters despair and poets lie, we held a small gathering. The council called it Community Day. I called it a soft opening for the light. Mateo rigged streamers the color of practical joy. The electrician wizard, satisfied with his work on the rails and determined to denounce bureaucracy by being meticulous, flipped a test switch with a flourish and declared, "Safe enough to keep us honest." People brought what they bring, a crock pot of chowder, a bag of rolls, a plate of lemon bars that nearly caused diplomatic incident when we realized there were only 12. Ada from the bakery cried while laughing and called me our lighthouse girl, which made me feel 14 and ancient at once. We placed the original guest book in the display case. I wiped my fingerprints from the glass with the hem of my sweater and felt a tug of grief that surprised me. The book had become a person in my hands. Now it would become a relic, protected not because it was done, but because it had done so much. I rested my palm on the wood and said thank you in the language I'd learned here. A quiet aloud. People filed past and put their fingers to the glass, leaving smudges I didn't immediately clean. It felt right that the living left their prints on the memory of the words. Then I brought out the new book. It was simple and sturdy, its leather unscarred, its pages thick with the promise of listening. I had spent an evening by the south window choosing a pencil that wouldn't tear the paper and drawing a small lantern on the title page. Just an outline, nothing fussy. I wrote in my careful hand the first line, "Write what's on your heart. Someone will answer." Beneath it, on a narrow ribbon of paper, I added, "If you cannot write, rest. The light knows your language." We left it open on the table. It looked both brave and shy. People approached like you do when a baby is sleeping, not wanting to wake it in the wrong mood. A teenager, the cat artist, wrote first. She scrawled, "I got the job," then drew a star. Her mother added, "You did that," underneath, and pressed her cheek to the girl's hair in a gesture that would have made me weep even if no one had been watching. A couple visiting from Chile wrote in Spanish, "You made us think of our old neighborhood. We will walk slower from now on." A man I knew only by sight wrote, "I am 30 days sober today," and I wrote back, quietly in the evening lamplight, "The sea keeps count with you." Not all entries asked for answers. Some were declarations to self, some were apologies that needed a wall to hear them. A few were jokes, because people saved themselves that way too. The lighthouse received them without hierarchy. I answered when a reply would help. I left the rest to the space between the lines. That night, after the last paper plates had been regretted and the streamers had given up their bright cause one by one, I stayed. Mateo stacked chairs in small acts of kindness and whistled a tune that promised sleep. "You good?" he asked, and I nodded the way you do when good is deeper than fine. He clapped the door frame as he always did, a ritual he refuses to explain, and left the cliff to my keeping. It was Sunset's turn to perform one of its old tricks. The lamp in the lantern room glowed with a soft, steady authority that had nothing to prove. We weren't a navigational aid anymore, not officially. I knew the document numbers by heart now. But some lights don't ask for permission to be useful. We lit the lamp on evenings when the fog seemed nervous or the town seemed tired. It glowed like a long breath held without strain. Waves crashed below in their deliberate grammar. The garden nodded yes to everything, to the wind, to the light, to the way day slides into night without asking. I opened the original book in its case and with hands that reverenced and shook in approximately equal measure, lifted it carefully to the table. I set it where it had learned to live, the center, where elbows wore the wood, where flour from Ada's apron had dusted the edge last week, where a teenager's bracelet had left an indigo smudge. I turned the pages slowly, the way you walk through an old house to say goodbye to each room. There they all were, decades standing shoulder to shoulder like neighbors at a parade. The man waiting for the letter, the woman with the ring and the splinter, the soldier who ate sandwiches in the quiet, the teacher who prayed without kneeling, the girl who drew the whale tail, Jonah's line and my reply, and his laughter folded into the words like a note tucked into a pocket for later, the mermaid we didn't see, the mother's "I love you" that bridged a square of paper with a rope no storm could cut. I found the unfinished letter and read it again. and this time it sounded less like a cliffhanger and more like a compass. I don't know if I'm coming back to stay or to say goodbye. Either way, I'm bringing the answer. I think the light will know what to do with it. It had. The light had done what lights do. It kept steady while we decided which way to go. In the weeks since that note slid onto my lap, I'd watched decision after decision arrive in small forms. Someone choosing to speak, someone choosing to sleep, someone choosing to forgive, someone choosing to try again. The answer didn't always look like ending or beginning. Often it looked like continuing, and I had come to believe that continuing is the bravest verb. I took up the pencil. The room breathed. The sea applauded and scolded simultaneously, as seas will. The lamp held me like a gentler sun. I wrote my final reply in the old book. I came here lost. Thank you for helping me find my way home. I pressed my palm to the sentence and felt the warmth of my hand leak into the page. My old life flickered through me, the office lights always a notch too bright, the client emails that picked at me like seabirds, the careful conversation in the kitchenette where a man I'd loved tried to be kind and succeeded in being honest. The woman I'd been last winter would not have recognized this version of me. A person who swept and answered and planted foxglove against a cliff's opinion, but she would have wanted to. I slid the book back into its case. The glass reflected a version of my face softened by lamplight and the sort of tired that means you did your work. I locked the case with the key that clicked in a satisfied way and turned to the new book waiting open, its first page already a small celebration of the living. I tied the pencil a little shorter so it wouldn't thump against the table when wind got ideas. I straightened the chair without making it look like I had straightened the chair. Then I climbed to the lantern room because it was sunset, and that's what you do when you live with a light. The stairs learned my steps, the rail learning my hand. The glass circled me with the world. The water flashed its teeth and then smiled. The town below held a scatter of windows beginning to glow, other rooms agreeing to be safe havens for a while longer. I set my palm on the brass and whispered names I'd learned here. Jonah, Ada, Miss Doll, Mateo, the pink-haired girl who took a job and a star, the fisherman who drew the two-full boat, the mother whose 3 words built a bridge. I included, snug among them, the woman I'd been when I arrived, tired, thin-skinned, almost silent, noisy inside. Brave enough to come anyway. I told the light what I tell myself now when the wind tries to turn me back into weather. Keep steady, that's all. Keep steady. Someone came up the path then, footsteps quick, like a decision that had finally gathered its coat. I didn't hurry down. I wanted them to make it to the door and read the sign and come in on their own terms. I wanted the bell to ring its spoon-on-glass sound. I wanted to walk down and say, "Welcome. We're open because we're not closed." I wanted to watch them approach the table, settle, and write what needed writing on a page that had been waiting exactly this long for them. The lamp glowed softly while the waves negotiated with the rocks below. The foxglove nodded grandly. The wildflowers, those stubborn commas, had begun to write entire sentences in the soil. The bench by the south window had learned to hold strangers like old friends. I stepped back from the glass and started down the stairs, and I felt the lighthouse speak again in the language I know best now, a steady quiet that makes room. The words weren't words. They were floorboards and breath, and the grip of the railing and the pencil ready on its string. They were the town hum in the distance, and the slam of a car door, and the bell on the lintel, and the intake of breath a person makes when they realize it's safe to say what they came to say. The door opened, the bell chimed. I reached the last step and moved into my place, at the table beside the book in the life I hadn't known how to want. The visitor looked up, eyes wide the way eyes are when they meet their lives halfway. "Hi," I said, with the ease of someone who has let go of performance. "I'm Erica. Write what's on your heart. Someone will answer." The lamp burned, the waves spoke, the lighthouse listened, and the line I had written in the old book warmed under the glass like an ember that didn't need tending anymore. I came here lost. Thank you for helping me find my way home. There's a click on his end, his mug maybe, then the little throat sound he makes when he puts down a thought so he can pick up mine. "What do you miss most?" Caleb asks, not as a test, but as a place for me to put something. "The predictable noises," I say. Then the smaller thing. Being overheard by people who know how I sneeze. I laugh because the admission is ridiculous and true, a combination that has become our specialty. When I moved, I didn't think, well, I knew I'd be lonely, but I didn't know what shape it would take. Turns out it's shaped like trying to memorize the elevator's sounds so I can pretend I'm hearing someone I grew up with coming home. The radio hums with us, and somewhere in the building a pipe knocks like it's practicing a stubborn instrument. Out the window, the courtyard's single security light bends the trees into quiet cursive. "Sometimes," I say, because the shape keeps elaborating itself. I'll hear someone walking down the hall, and I'll want to be the kind of person who opens the door and says, "Do you want this extra muffin?" And then I remember I don't have muffins, and even if I did, I wouldn't open the door. So I've been pretending inside my head and calling that socializing. "Pretending counts," he says immediately, as if he's been waiting to absolve me of that. The rehearsal is still music. There's a slide of paper on his end. I've learned his evening choreography enough to hear it. Luna chirrups, offended or amused, probably both. I didn't move to get away from people, I admit. But now that I'm away, sometimes I feel ashamed of how much I prefer the sound of my own fridge to a bar. You and my cat are of one mind, he says, solemn. Then softer, I get it. Do you? I ask. I'm not being accusatory. I want to be sure we're not bonding over two very different maps and pretending they match. Because you make bridges out of wires. You aim sound at people on purpose. You're good at this. A pause long enough to be a door. Then, you want to know a secret? His voice does that shy, brave thing it does when he's about to hand me something he doesn't take out of the drawer for most people. I'm a musician. I smile into the dark because I have known this without the word. Of course you are. Was, he corrects, gentle but precise. I mean, I still am. I still play. But I used to perform. I had a band, then a solo thing. I loved it, and it loved me back. And then one night my heart decided to become an unhelpful percussionist, and I couldn't make it stop. Stage fright hit like a bad weather system. I kept telling myself it was a phase I could biohack. It wasn't. I stopped. I told myself designing soundscapes was adjacent enough to count, and most days it does. But I haven't played for other humans in almost 3 years. Unless you count Luna, which you should not. She is not impressed by major sevenths. I don't breathe for a second, which is my version of cheering. What happened? I ask, because the way he says it begs to be walked back through with company. He exhales. It's not a sigh, it's an inventory. I remember the precise moment it stopped being my instrument and started being a test. There was this small venue, red velvet curtains, beer that tasted like someone told a glass of water a joke about hops. I'd played there a dozen times. That night, I stepped onto the stage and felt like I'd walked into someone else's body. My hands knew what to do, my lungs didn't. The crowd wasn't big. No one booed. If anything, they were kind. But my chest squeezed. My fingers forgot the width of the fretboard. I kept thinking I could push through. I finished the set and went home and told myself I'd play the next show and it would be fine. It wasn't. It wasn't for months. I started making excuses, and then I stopped making excuses and just stopped. I tell people I got busy being practical. The truth is, I got busy being afraid. There's a hum behind his words. The building, the line, my own blood making ambient music. The simple courage of his confession lands in my lap like something small that still has a heartbeat. I press my hand to the radio's side like I could send him a pulse back. I'm sorry, I say, which isn't a solution and doesn't pretend to be. That sounds like mourning with bad lighting. He laughs, surprised and a little grateful. That's exactly it. A beat. What's funny, if that's the word, is that playing for no one is easy. Playing for everyone is impossible. Playing for one person in the dark at 92 where the building listens but doesn't stare. I could do that. The dare of it floats between us like dust you only see when the lamp is at a particular angle. I feel an old thrill and a new tenderness putting their elbows on my table. Then do, I say too quickly because I'm greedy for any version of him that does not apologize for making noise. I don't want to scare the superintendent's keys into reproducing, he says, but the joke is a scrim. Behind it, the shape of yes. Keep it whisper, I say. Moth volume, I'll open the window. It's late enough that the courtyard is a bowl and we're two spoons on opposite sides of it. I pad to the window and lift it an inch. The sash gives its habitual complaint and then stays. Cold lays a ribbon on my wrists. I click off the one small lamp I sometimes allow and let the room revert to our nightly country. Ready? He asks. Yes. My readiness feels fragile and durable at once, like glass you trust because it has survived a dishwasher. The radio tells me before the air does, a soft, unshowy G. He's tuned, or nearly. There's the small sound of him settling. Fabric, wood, the hiss of a breath that's thinking about becoming a note. Then a gentle arpeggio that lands like apology's kinder cousin. It comes through the line clean and intimate, the way a damp paper cup makes a more honest drum. A half-second later, the faintest cousin of that sound arrives from across the alley through my open window, like a ghost of the same chord. The delay is so slight I might be inventing it, and still the effect is dizzying. The private and the public, the radio and the night, braiding. He doesn't play anything performative. It's not that he couldn't. It's that he chooses simplicity like an oath. A two-chord cradle, the melody walking carefully where it shines. In the room, in the radio, in the alley, the same song, 3 versions, the near, and the elsewhere. My grandmother's records would approve. Mahalia would nod. Ella would grin. Billy would narrow her eyes and make a joke I'd write down. I sit on the floor and let it rearrange my breathing. It's not a concert, it's the opposite. I don't clap, I hold. He falters once, just a fraction barely, and the radio catches the tiny intake of breath he makes. That oh no that anyone who has ever tried to be good has felt. He keeps going. The next note is softer on purpose, like he bowed to the error and asked it to sit beside him. I don't know when I start to cry. It's not huge, it's just that some notes find a latch. They lift it. The room opens. When he stops, the aftermath is its own instrument. The building shifts its weight. Someone in 2A coughs in a way that is somehow affectionate. Out on the street, a bus sighs and keeps going. Through the radio, his breath evens. Luna makes a pleased little engine sound like she has given us both a B+. I haven't done that in a long time, he says, and the understatement is so large it could wear a sash and wave. I could hear the window, I tell him, and the radio, together. It felt like the universe let me practice having both my hands on the world. He is quiet long enough that I worry I said the wrong beautiful thing. Then, that might be the kindest way anyone's ever described my playing. You don't have to earn kindness, I say, and then I realize that's partly a note to self. We don't run away from it with jokes. We stay. It's a skill. We talk about small things so the big thing doesn't get embarrassed and leave. He tells me he's been practicing scales at weird hours, the alphabet of redemption in G, C, D, because Luna is indifferent at 3 a.m. and the building thinks any sound then is a dream trying to remember itself. I tell him my grandmother used to hum around the house so quietly you couldn't tell if she was making noise or making silence different. He says that's exactly what he wants the guitar to do. How lonely are you? He asks after a while. He does it so gently it doesn't feel like a question with a grade. Not as a test. As a measurement, we can fail together. I look at the little red light on the power strip and decide that, yes, tonight, honesty is a good insomnia. It changes hour by hour. Sometimes it's a fog that sits at ankle height and makes the room cold. Sometimes it's a bird that pecks at the window. Sometimes it's just lack. Like my sentence is missing a noun. It got worse when I moved because no one here knows the version of me that you only earn by listening to someone's 13 favorite nearly identical stories. And then I felt guilty for being bad at being new because I chose this. So I started avoiding situations where I might be reminded I chose poorly. Which means I avoided situations where I could meet anyone who might make me feel like I chose okay. He lets the syllable be soft. The self-checkout spiral. Exactly. I surprise myself by laughing. I tell myself I'll be bold tomorrow. Tomorrow gets here, I order delivery, and I watch someone else's life in a show where they always have crumbs on the counter because they're loved enough to not perform. You're loved enough to not perform, he says, like he's lighting a candle and not waiting around to see if I blow it out. I don't know how to accept it, so I say thank you like a person does when someone hands them a fruit they've never tasted. He clears his throat. True thing from my side of the wire? Always. I quit performing because I told myself it was kinder to quit than to fail in front of people. It wasn't kindness. It was a bruise I kept pressing because it felt like control. He pauses. The radio holds our little theater. Playing for you tonight felt like, not control exactly, more like agreement. Like I said to my hands, okay, we'll try again, but we'll try smaller and truer. And they said back, fine, but we insist on a cat in the audience. What if that's all we need, I say, dizzy with relief. For the trying to be small and true for a while? I imagine the look on his face, the way someone looks when the simple solution they've been suspicious of starts to work. We go back to our format because ritual lets the heart learn to walk after it has remembered how to run. One song, mine. I choose Roberta Flack, the one where her voice is a held breath and a decision. One story, his. He tells me about the time he tried to replace a light fixture and wound up carrying the glass shade around his apartment like a baby while he looked for a screwdriver, cooing at it without meaning to because terror makes us weirdly tender. One question, mine. I take the card from the back of the drawer. If your fear had a job, what would it be? Crossing guard, he says immediately. Overzealous. Loud whistle. Keeps me from stepping off the curb even when the street is empty. Mine's a museum docent, I say. Polite, well-informed, convinced the rope is there for my own good. We both hum, the same tiny note, startled and grateful at the overlap. Is our fear wrong? He asks. Not always, I say, but it uses the same tone for wet paint and tiger, and I don't think it should. The night thins around the edges. The radiator considers usefulness and then decides to make a promise instead. The building's bones stretch like a cat leaving a sun patch. I am less afraid of the superintendent's keys than I was at dinner. The radio has taught me to be a person that can hold a truth in her hand without fidgeting. Later, when we say goodnight and the static leans back into its river, I leave the window open a little longer. Somewhere across the alley, a faint chord happens without the radio's help. I don't know if he knows I can hear it. I listen anyway, like a thief with a good reason. It's not a song. It's the thing you play when you're putting the guitar away and you want to tell it you appreciated its company. I stand there with my forehead against the cool glass and take an inventory of the selves I've been in this building. The one who counted spoons, the one who learned the elevator's sigh, the one who taped M's note to the fridge. If the wires hum, hum back, and hummed for practice just once. I don't know yet who the next one will be, but I know I'm not stuck at the self-checkout forever. Somewhere there's a clerk who knows my sneeze. The next morning I almost hold the door open for a woman with a laundry basket. I don't, because the old instinct taps my wrist and says, not today. But I almost do. I say good morning to the mail carrier like we already know each other. He nods and puts a circular into every box, a mass invitation to a pizza place that thinks we might be its people. I throw mine in the recycling and then take it back out because maybe I want to pin it to the corkboard I never use as proof I am at least adjacent to a person who orders pizza on a weeknight and invites someone over to help eat it. That evening, I put my grandmother's Billie Holiday back in the crate and choose something I've never played. a record from the thrift store with a cover so earnest it quivers. Late night love. It will be terrible. It will be perfect. I set it on the turntable like a dare. 92, he says at 10, and the number is a door that has learned to swing easily. 92, I say. Song or story? Story, he decides, and I love him for breaking the rule just enough to feel like we own it. I wrote a set list today, he admits, for a show that doesn't exist, not for a stage, for here. 2 old things, 2 new things, 1 thing I don't know how to do yet. I put Amanda's window at the bottom like a location. The air in my apartment changes subtle as breath. I put a hand on the glass again, the way you check if something is real when it isn't yours. I'll bring the seating, I say, and we both know that means the floor. We do the song, something syrupy that nevertheless manages to be exactly the kind of tenderness you can eat with a spoon, and the question, his. When's the last time you did something you were bad at on purpose? Mine. Last week I tried to whistle in the stairwell and sounded like a deflating balloon. We laugh, and the laugh fills the room like light usually does. When I turn off the radio, I don't feel the drop I used to fear. I feel a tug in a forward direction. I sit there in the dark a long time thinking about the day I might open my door while the elevator is still deciding if it's generous and step into the hall at the same time as someone else and not flinch. I picture knocking on 3B in daylight. The thought flips between impossible and obvious, as if my brain is a coin toss machine and someone keeps feeding it quarters. Not now, I tell myself, because the ritual is not a cage, but it is a nest, and we've only just learned to sit without breaking the eggs. Soon says something that hasn't lied to me in a while. I fall asleep with the window cracked and my hand smelling faintly of lemon oil and copper. In the middle of the night, the building wakes me to make a noise I've named permission. A long, friendly exhale in the radiator and the quiet complaint of a pipe somewhere deciding to be useful. I smile in the dark, ridiculous and true. I am loved enough not to perform, at least here, at least now. The world is still outside, and it is loud in a way that would take practice. The world is also in here, very small and very patient, and it is asking me questions I want to answer. If I stand very still, I can feel the faintest echo of his guitar in the windowsill, a note caught in the wood. It's probably just heat meeting air. It's probably faith pretending to be science. It's probably the building noticing me. I put my ear to it anyway. When the wires hum, I hum back. And then I let quiet answer in its own voice, which I'm starting to recognize not as the absence of people, but as the presence of me. Getting ready, not rushed, steadying my hands on the rail of the real world, listening for the step that sings. The first night it's only static, I tell myself it's weather. Our building is a barometer with secrets. The radiators take seasons personally. The courtyard trees complain and preen. Maybe there's a storm 2 neighborhoods away that the wires can feel in their copper bones. Maybe the superintendent's keys sighed too heavily and jostled a tired connection. I sit with my hand on the radio the way you sit with your palm on a sleeping dog, waiting for the twitch that means a dream you're invited to. Nothing, just hiss, a snowstorm that will not resolve into a station. 92 is no longer our doorway. It's a wall of soft white sound that refuses to open. I turn the dial a breath to the left, a breath to the right, like adjusting someone's blanket. The static changes pitch, but not intent. Okay, I say aloud, making it cheerful because sometimes cheerfulness coerces reality. We'll try again tomorrow. Tomorrow arrives like a polite knock I ignore. At 10, I light no lamp, open the window a practical inch, set my fingers on the dial. The same listening, the same hope inherent in my wrist, the same perseverance of nothing. I wait as long as it takes to finish 2 glasses of water, one because I am thirsty and one because I am superstitious. The static stays. I lower my forehead to the radio's warm flank and feel ridiculous and tender at the same time, like a person kissing a lucky coin. On the 3rd night, I talk to the static because apparently loneliness has stages and some of them are conversational. Luna, I say softly into the hiss, if you can hear me. Betrayal by Basil is not the worst thing that's happened to either of us. The static hums, which is different than purring and also, weirdly, not. I think about knocking on 3B. I think about it like a fictional character might. A montage of me putting my hand on the doorknob of my own apartment, taking it off, putting it back, like someone learning the choreography of leaving. I picture the hallway, the step that sings between 3 and 4, the particular draft by the window where the paint bubbles like it wants to be both solid and weather. I picture his door, and the part of me that hates being seen frowns so hard my eyebrows ache. Instead, I write a note I don't deliver. I find an old index card and write in a neat hand because neatness makes me feel braver. 92 misses you. If the wires hum, hum back. I sign it with an M. I consider the joke, consider the audacity, then write my name small on the bottom anyway because I'd like to get better at signing my life. I slide the card into an envelope and set it on my coffee table like a pet I'm not ready to adopt. By the 4th night, I have developed rituals like someone with a superstition and a beloved ghost. I clean the dust from the radio's vents with the soft brush I use on my grandmother's records. I reposition the power strip so it looks like it's paying attention. I turn the dial to 92 exactly, not a hair to either side. And when the static pours out obediently, refusing to resolve, I do not cry because crying would elevate this to something dramatic, and what we had was defiantly not drama. It was a practice, a small discipline, a nightly kindness you could hold in your hand. The building becomes a dictionary of everything that isn't him. The faint drip in the pipes, like the building is learning to speak another language. The drag of someone's laundry basket down the hall, and the sigh as their door opens and closes. A sigh, I tell myself, is relief. The elevator's growl as it thinks better of being generous and decides to rest. The supermarket circulars shoved in every mailbox like the world is determined to feed us whether or not we accept the invitation. The keys jangling on the superintendent's belt like weather, always impending. It's not that I don't have sound. It's that my room has forgotten the way it tilted toward his voice, like a sunlit plant. I'm a room that has to relearn where the windows are. During the day, I work. I answer emails that want me to make sentences less alive. I take a walk around the block and pretend I'm choosing the weather. I buy one of those single-serve muffins in crinkly plastic and eat it with the guilt and pleasure you reserve for unremarkable sweetness. At the bodega, the basil looks accusatory. I'm on your side, I tell it under my breath, and the man behind the counter looks at me like he's seen and forgiven all worse. I try playing records to the static, like a ritual of remembering. I put on Moon River and listen to the needle fall and the hiss lay underneath, the radio answering with a hiss of its own like a choir of snow. It's both comforting and unkind to myself. It's everything about memory in one sound. On the 5th morning, there's an envelope under my door. It's not the thick cream of M's old paper. It's a torn page from a spiral notebook, folded with the urgency of someone who needed the paper to be smaller right now. Inside, a line, "Sorry, working on it." C. A paw print, suspiciously circular, next to the C. I laugh into a laugh that catches at its own edge and becomes something wetter, then straighten it with a breath. I write back on the index card and slip it under his. I believe you. No rush. There is a rush, but I am trying to be a citizen of calm. I sign it with my whole name this time, and the M my hand wants to add becomes a flourish on the A. That evening, the static is still a room I can't open. The note sits on my counter like a small lighthouse, which is a ridiculous metaphor for notebook paper and a ballpoint pen, and yet I put it on the fridge with the tomato magnet, under M's old looped hand. If the wires hum back, like I am building a museum to correspondence in which the curators are me and the building itself. On the 6th night, I dream I knock and the door opens and there is only a guitar leaning against a wall and a note that says, "Learn." In the dream I pick it up and my fingers are nimble and my breath is patient, and when the song comes I am in no hurry to finish it. I wake up with my palms tingling and the taste of copper in my mouth like I've been talking to the wires. It's Saturday when I finally put my hand on my own doorknob and don't take it off. The hallway smells faintly like someone overdid it with lemon cleaner, which I pretend is a sign that the building wants to be a kitchen today. Warm and busy and forgiving. The step between 4 and 3 sings when I hit it wrong. I hit it wrong on purpose and tell myself that's agency. 3B's door looks like a familiar book. The kind you keep passing on a shelf and not picking up because you know it might change what you think you're doing. I knock. 3 polite taps that sound like a throw pillow. The silence that answers is informed silence. It has read books. It collects stamps. I knock again, louder, and hear the faint harpsichord of keys in a bowl. The door opens. Caleb looks like someone who has been living inside a decision. His hair is in a negotiation with gravity. There's a smudge of something on his forearm that means he's been in a project. His eyes are tired in a way that tells me he's been practicing not to be dramatic. He smiles anyway because he is good at being kind, even when he is also scared. Amanda, he says, and my name in his mouth makes me aware of my own face in a way that makes me want to rearrange it and also keep it exactly as it is. Luna appears in the gap between his feet and the door jamb, looks at me like an audition she's already passed, and sits. Behind him, boxes, not all the way packed. Half-committed cardboard with their flaps open like they changed their mind about being mouths. A coil of cable lives next to a suitcase. The guitar is on the table with a towel under it like a patient. There's a stack of records I recognize because the sleeves are the same as mine. Billy, Etta, Mahalia, Ben King. On the counter, a plant that is not basil tries to pretend it is. Hi, I say, which is insufficient and exactly true. Your note. He rubs at his forearm with the heel of his hand, which is the exact thing people do when they've been using their hands for other things. The line. I think I fried a junction, he says. I tried to fix it before telling you because I hate delivering news that isn't already solved. That's a flaw. He smiles at the admission like it's a silly little dog. I kept thinking I could solder apologetically and the building would forgive me. Did it? I ask. It forgave me safely, he says. It refused to work until I routed everything like a person who respects heat. My breath unclenches. And the boxes? He exhales a laugh that has nothing to do with humor. Right, the boxes. I got a call. A friend from before, before the stage stopped being cooperating furniture. There's a gig, not one night. A job, maybe. In a studio across the state. Arranging, co-writing, playing sometimes if I can. It's an offer that sounds like the version of me I put in storage. Across the state is geography dressed as loss. I look at the boxes like they are children in coats no one zipped. You're moving, I say. Because naming a thing makes it behave better, or at least it doesn't sneak up on you. Maybe, maybe, he says, and the word is a tug of war between desire and dread. I told them I needed the weekend. I told them I had a cat to consult. At the word cat, Luna blinks with authority. She lifts her paw and places it on one of the boxes as if to say, "File under not yet." The room feels like a heartbeat you don't know the tempo of. I didn't come here with a speech, which is ridiculously unlike me. I like speeches. They make me feel like I can stack my feelings in order and label them clearly. But there is another kind of bravery, the kind that happens in your mouth before your brain has a chance to make a list. It arrives like water finding a downward path. Don't go, I say. It's not the elegant request I'd imagined if I'd allowed myself to imagine asking it. It's not even a sentence with garnish. It lands in the room like a small animal that expects to be shooed. I'm shocked by my own voice, how steady it is, how not embarrassed. Caleb doesn't flinch. He doesn't look away or turn it into a joke that would give me an exit. He leans against the doorframe like a person who knows splinters and forgives them and waits in case the rest of the sentence wants to come. I mean, I say, which is such a useless preface that it turns out to be permission. I mean, I can't be the reason you stay or go. I don't want to be. I don't know you in the ways that get medals and casseroles, but your voice through that radio, and I press my hand to my chest because apparently we're doing gestures now. It made this place into something that noticed me. It made me brave enough to leave my window open again. It made the word hello feel like something I could say without apologizing for it. When the static arrived, it was a hole the shape of a person I hadn't let myself hope for. I'm rambling now. Or maybe I'm trying on a speech without the bullet points. I want you to get the life that feels like the right kind of loud, I add, because fairness can sit next to desire and not bite. I also don't want you to leave. I swallow. The building swallows with me, old throat sympathetic. I like our station. It helped. It helps. I make a small, helpless noise that I decide to allow because it's honest. I don't want to lose it. The silence that follows has the exact weight of a hand placed on top of mine at a table. Thank you for saying that, he says slowly, like he's winding the words around something fragile to keep them from bumping. You're one of the only reasons I'm not already on the highway, running on adrenaline and bad coffee. The job. He stops and corrects himself the way he does when he wants to be surgically accurate. The offer feels like a life I miss without remembering if I actually liked living it. And then there's this life, the one with the step that sings, and the woman upstairs who can make Mahalia sound like a message directly for the room, and a cat who has not approved any travel schedule. The line going out felt like a test I didn't want, but maybe the kind that shows you what you reach for first. What did you reach for? I ask, and I am aware that my voice is too soft for a hallway, and I don't care. He tips his head, considering it without hurry. The soldering iron, he says, deadpan, and I snort despite myself. He lets the joke be a bridge, not a dodge. And your door, he adds, serious again. I stood here last night with my hand on the knob and couldn't figure out how to knock without breaking something. Isn't that stupid? I can talk to you through a lightning bolt I braided into a hallway, but the doorknob was too much. It isn't stupid, I say. I'm tired of naming our tenderness as idiocy. The knob is a test, too. We stand in the doorway like a recipe for a moment I would not have known how to prepare 3 months ago. Luna yawns elaborately and then moves to headbutt my calf as if to offer solidarity. The apartment behind him is a map of his real life, and for a beat I let myself look. The chair with a dent shaped like a person who argues with the news. The tape on the floor where he probably placed a pedal board that isn't there anymore. The envelope from the studio with someone's name in a font that thinks credibility is size. Can I come in? I ask. The hallway is doing that echo thing where every word feels like it's wearing someone else's shoes. Please, he says, and the word is relieved in a way that makes my chest ache. His apartment smells like coffee and wood and that metal scent old electric things make when they're considering their next act. The half-packed boxes give the room the feeling of a friend sitting on the edge of a bed with their coat on, uncertain, half here, half gone. He nudges one with his foot like he's sorry. We sit on the floor because chairs feel too official, and the couch looks like it's in the middle of telling a story to itself, and I don't want to interrupt. I don't know what I want you to do, I say, trying to be honest and not helpful, which is difficult because I have a lifelong subscription to advice. I don't know what you should do, I amend, giving up my clipboard. But I know I don't want to go back to a radio that doesn't have your voice in it. And I know I'd like to learn what your voice sounds like in daytime. He looks at the guitar on the table, at Luna, at the plant trying hard to be Basil's second act. Daytime is scarier, he says. Less flattering. True, I say, but also the coffee is better. He laughs, real and unpretty and surprised, and something unclenches between us like a fist that has realized no one is attacking. What if we make a trial? He asks, scrubbing a hand over his face as if ideas itch. I tell the studio I need 2 weeks. I fix the line because I want to fix what I break even if I didn't mean to break it. We try, what do you call it? Daytime. A coffee, a walk around the block, the step that sings. I play once in the stairwell, quiet for the building, an offering, and see if my hands behave when people can see them attached to an actual person who looks back. If I still want to go, I'll go. If staying isn't cowardice but choosing, then I'll stay. That's not indecision, he adds quickly, because he's arguing with a very specific judge. It's data. It's kindness, I say. For copper, for lungs, for a person. We sit with it. That's become the thing I trust with him. The way neither of us tries to fill the room so quickly that we knock something over. The building participates. The pipe gives one approving thunk. A door down the hall whispers open and closed. Someone upstairs plays 3 notes on an instrument that will not reveal itself and then stops as if embarrassed. I look at the boxes again. I'm not naive enough to believe that wanting someone to stay is reason enough for them not to go. But I am newly brave enough to admit I want what I want, and to trust that the asking itself is not an imposition. If you go, I say, because fairness is my inconvenient religion, will you call? Not through the line, with a number, like people in a world where we remember what phones are for. He nods, almost solemn. I will. And if I stay, will you come downstairs on purpose sometimes without pretending you forgot something in the laundry room? I blink. Was I subtle? Not even a little, he says, delighted, which is how I knew it wasn't about laundry. We make tea because it's the sort of activity that lets your mouth be busy and your mind be brave. He uses 2 mismatched mugs. Mine has a chip big enough to be part of its biography. Luna inspects the steam and decides we are boring and curls herself in a box that holds only a folded sweater and the word maybe. I want to take a picture of her and caption it boundaries, but I don't take out my phone because this moment deserves to be lived by the oldest camera, attention. Do you want to see the broken bit? He asks after the first sip. I do. I'm not sure he means the line, but it turns out he does, and both meanings are true anyway. He shows me the junction, the little blackened place where copper learned the hard way that heat and hope need more space between them. He explains the tubing the hardware man called kindness. He calls the building she when he's worrying a wire, and I memorize it. He hands me the heat shrink, and I hold it like we are baptizing something that can't stop being what it is, but can be protected better. Okay, he says when we've done what we can tonight without making the super's keys duplicate in rage. Tomorrow I'll finish this. Tomorrow night we'll test 92. He glances at the boxes like he's checking whether they've grown in the night. Next day, coffee, and he swallows. I'll try the stairwell. 2 chords. Moth volume. Moth volume, I echo. I feel like someone told me to be careful with a lit candle and also to walk forward with it and also to trust that I can do both at once. I stand to go because it feels important to end the first daylight properly, not with a fade out, but with a good night that promises morning. At the door, I turn back because I am not done being brave. For the record, I say, if you go, I'll be sad. I'll be proud too. and I'll say normal human things about how of course this is good and I will mean it, but I will be sad. I make a face because crying at doorways is not yet part of my personality. Also, for the record, you are already the kind of musician who counts. The playing is the proof. The listening is the art. He opens his mouth and closes it and opens it again, like the exact words he wants are in the next room and he's not sure he's allowed to fetch them. For the record, he says finally, you are the first home I've heard in a very long time. We do not hug. It feels like an event we shouldn't let the hallway narrate. We do stand there and let our eyes be steady on each other for 3 full heartbeats, which is enough intimacy to reconstruct any radio line. In my apartment, the static is still waiting. I turn on the lamp because the room can handle it. I put hot water in the chipped mug he gave me and watch the steam approve. On the fridge, M's looped advice and his plain apology flutter a little in the thought of a draft. If the wires hum, hum back, working on it. That night I sleep without the window open, and I don't apologize to the air for needing to keep it out. I dream of the stairwell, of the step that sings, of a guitar note like a hand opening. I dream that I'm brave in a way only very quiet people get to be, without witnesses until they choose them. In the morning, the mailbox holds a circular for a hardware store 3 bus rides away. The headline says, "Kindness for copper," which is not what it says at all, but that's what I read and it's enough. I clip the coupon and tuck it under a magnet like someone preparing for a life where objects have uses beyond metaphor. At 10 that night, I sit on the rug without turning off the lamp, because I want to see my own face be patient. I set the dial to 92, and I wait without rehearsing sadness in case it's needed. The static hums, unbothered, uninterested. I nod to it like an equal. "Amanda?" His voice comes through like the moment after you sneeze when you realize there was nothing to be afraid of. It's smaller without the darkness around it. It's also truer, which is going to be a problem for my heart and a solution for my life. "I'm here," I say, and I am. The line holds, the room holds. The future does not promise, which makes it more honest. He says he bought coffee. I say I am practicing being a person who leaves their apartment while the elevator is still deciding who it likes. He says the stairwell has good acoustics for intention. I say intention is my second language. He says the studio can wait 2 weeks. I say yes. "Song?" he asks, the ritual remembering us and sitting down nearby, polite, ready. "Not tonight," I say, surprising both of us with a decision that feels like a stare I didn't know was there. "Tonight, just..." I let the word be the only thing it knows how to be. "Hello?" "Hello?" he says back. And the simplicity is so extravagant it makes the room bigger. We hum, not to fill the space, but to show it we know how. And under the hum lives the small, brave fact of what I said in a doorway this afternoon and didn't take back. I don't want you to leave. I will let you if you must, but I don't want you to. Sometimes naming is a light you can carry down a dark hall without setting the paint on fire. Sometimes it's enough to see where the step sings so you can lift your foot the right way. Sometimes, not always, the knob turns. I learned that courage can sound like a long exhale. 2 days after I stood in Caleb's doorway and told the truth without a speech, the building feels like it has loosened one belt notch. The line at 92 holds again, steady as a pulse you can set your errands by, and the boxes in 3B hover in that tentative state where they could become a life raft or a coffee table. He calls the studio and buys himself 2 weeks. Data, he says. Kindness, I correct. He laughs and I hear something in the sound that wasn't there before. A roominess, like his breath knows it has somewhere to go. On the second evening of our truce with the future, we don't play a song. We listen to the building breathe and decide that counts as music. Then he says, I have an idea, with the precise caution of someone introducing a stray dog to a toddler. It's going to sound ridiculous. Ridiculous is my second favorite tempo, I say, propped against the wall, bare feet on the rug that has learned the geography of my shins. What if we bring the radio out of hiding? He asks. Not toss it to the wolves, just set it in the hall. See if the line wants to be a hallway, not a secret. The super's right about wires and heat, and I've rerouted as much as I can. But also he's wrong about what this is. It doesn't have to be 2 people whispering under the quilt. It could be... He hesitates, searching for a word that doesn't sound evangelical. A porch. Like a stoop, I say, and my chest does that small ache that means something I miss is visiting. Old buildings used to have stoops where you could sit and not perform. Exactly that. We set the radio in the hallway just inside your door, ours if you want. A sign that says 10 o'clock, 1 song, 1 story, 1 question, all are welcome, moth volume. We can keep it to a half hour. We can be our station but with folding chairs. If no one comes, fine. If 2 people come, it's twice what we have. If more than 2 come, we'll pretend we planned for that. My first instinct is to defend our smallness like a bird guards a nest from weather. Then I think of M's note on my fridge. If the wires hum, hum back. Maybe humming back sometimes means letting other people harmonize. Maybe the risk is not that something will be taken, but that something will become larger than I planned for and I will have to make room. I can make room. Let's try, I say, and I can feel the exact moment the decision enters the air. The room adjusts. My shoulders unclench as if they've been waiting for permission to be helpful. The next day, I write our sign in my neatest hand because neatness still feels like bravery to me. The Charleston Radio Hour, 10 p.m. One song, one story, one question. Moth volume welcome. Beneath it, I add the line I told him weeks ago. Please be gentle with your sound. It carries. Caleb tapes a small paper moth in the corner because he understands symbolism at a level that makes me want to keep him around indefinitely. We set the radio on a low table in the hallway between 3 and 4 where the light leaves everyone kind of soft. At 9:54, I put 2 chipped mugs of tea on the floor beside the radio and resist the temptation to label them like place cards. I open my door and leave it open. Caleb appears with Luna at his heels, dignified and skeptical, as if she's been scheduled to inspect a public works project. He's brought a little battery-powered lamp that glows like a patient firefly. We place it beside the radio. It makes the circle on the floor look deliberate. The first person to arrive is the superintendent. He doesn't knock. He materializes, keys muttering. For a second, I want to apologize to him on principle. But then I remember that principal is not the one living in my apartment. He looks at the table, at the sign, at the tea. His mouth thinks about disapproval and chooses something like curiosity instead, which is almost worse. "What's this?" he asks. "A test," Caleb says, not flinching. "Of kindness for copper and people." We keep it quiet. We've moved the line. We're inviting witnesses. No exposed guts. He gestures at Luna, who is busy sitting on the corner of the sign like a seal. "We have a safety inspector." The super snorts without meaning to, and then tries to cover it by clearing his throat so vigorously his keys flinch. He studies the little lamp. "You start a fire, you clean the soot," he says, which is his attempt at humor. "Half an hour. Then the hall is a hall again?" "Half an hour," I promise, relieved to be given a rule instead of a lecture. At 10 o'clock, the radio hums to life, low and civil. We don't have a program. We have a ritual, and rituals learn themselves. I glance down the corridor and see the woman from 2A hovering with a laundry basket balanced on her hip, pretending to fold a towel that has been folded for 3 minutes. A guy I recognize from 1C leans on the banister like he's been caught out in a rain shower and decided to wait it out rather than run. The elderly man from 2B, Mrs. Grunwald's brother, I think, or perhaps not a relative at all, but a person with his own reasons for being gentle, stands by the door to the stairs and nods once like he's told himself to be open to this. "Good evening," Caleb says into the air, into the building, into my bones. This is the Charleston Radio Hour, operating at moth volume. Tonight's song is brought to you by stubbornness and the letter M. I set my grandmother's mahalia on the deck. The needle finds its intention. The hall changes temperature. We keep our voices small, respectful of the hour. and the sound travels because it travels. That's what sound does. It finds whoever has left their window open a crack and asks if it may sit. Mahalia's voice is a window that remembers being a door. I sit on the floor cross-legged beside the radio and the lamp and the mugs and watch the hallway become a porch in real time. When the song ends, a soft clatter like someone clapping with their heart comes from down the hall, and I don't try to see who it is because anonymity feels like part of the spell. Caleb says, "Story?" And One Sees Guy surprises everyone, including himself, by stepping forward and outlouding, "Me." He tells us a short, simple thing about his mother's answering machine, how he kept it plugged in for a year after she died because her voice saying, "Leave a message," was the only time his apartment sounded like someone would walk in and change the air. He doesn't cry. I do a little, but in that way where your eyes understand not to drip, because the moment doesn't want to be about that. The question goes around like a small candle. What's a good sound that you didn't expect to like? 2A's laundry friend says the old radiator knock, and nods at the pipe like she's decided to stop resenting it for telling her it's winter before her phone does. The man by the stairs says crows with reverence, like a person who has been shown an argument he can finally get behind. The super clears his throat, which is his new language for "I have a feeling," and says, "The keys," shaking his ring in a gentle clatter. Sometimes they sound like not trouble. Sometimes they sound like, I don't know, people coming home. He looks appalled at himself and glares for good measure at a section of wall. We keep it to half an hour. It feels less like discipline than common sense. People have weekends, bedtimes, shows to stream, phone chargers to untangle, griefs to live with. At 10:29 I say, "Thank you for being gentle with your sound," and turn the dial to a place where the hiss sounds like rain, and the hallway exhales and returns to being bone and paint. 3 people say, "Good night," with the particular softness of people who have just agreed on something without politics or a vote. The super walks away jingling the keys like a lullaby he didn't mean to write. We do it again the next night because the building hasn't yet learned to dread us. Word gets out in the way it does, through stairwell whispers and accidental overheards. A teenager from 4A brings a cup of ramen and sits cross-legged beside Luna, who gives her the forgiving kind of disdain cats reserve for adolescents. Mrs. Grunwald herself arrives with a tin of store-bought cookies and pretends to be offended when we act like she baked them. I dig out folding chairs I didn't know I owned. Someone suggests, gently, a second mug for people who forgot they were thirsty until they heard water. We learn the hallway's acoustics the way we learned our hallway's gossip, by listening sideways. The carpet eats certain frequencies. The pipe is a stubborn harmonizer that thrives on resignation. The corner by the fire extinguisher makes a whisper into a liturgy. Our little lamp paints everyone into a kinder version of themselves. It's astonishing what low light and a rule about moth volume can do for a group of people who thought they lived alone. We keep the line at 92 because superstition has earned its tenure. We rotate songs. Mine, Caleb's, sometimes the teenagers. "Can I play something from my phone?" she asks, already apologizing. The answer is yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Stories arrive, shy and precise. The memory of a clock that stopped on a birthday and never started again. The way someone's father used to hum off key to antagonize the dog. A recipe for arroz con leche recited like a prayer over rice without measuring cups. Questions remain the gentle kind. The first sound your childhood window made when it opened, the noise you hope the world makes when you finally take a day off, the worst song you still secretly love. Sometimes no one answers. We let that be an answer too. The super's threat diminishes, not because he approves, but because it's hard to keep hating something that behaves itself respectfully in front of you every night. He becomes our reluctant usher, telling people what time we end before they ask, a boundary disguised as an invitation. I catch him once, when he thinks no one is looking, tapping his keys against his thigh in time with a chorus. He blushes when he notices me noticing, which is not something I thought possible for a man whose eyebrows perform permanent skepticism. Caleb and I keep our bargain with the daylight. The morning after our first hallway porch, we meet in the lobby on purpose. No radio, no static. I bring my normal face and the memory of saying, "Don't go on a threshold," and it turns out both are enough. We go for coffee and sit on a bench where the sun sits briefly between buildings like a shy guest. We talk about everything and nothing, which I recognize as the content of most genuine life. He shows me the inside of his calluses without meaning to when he lifts his cup. I show him the scar on my wrist from a kitchen fight with a can opener, which is my way of saying, here are my soft parts. They healed crooked, they work. On the third day of coffee, he takes his guitar to the stairwell and plays 2 chords for the building, and the building answers with the pipes approving thunk and a resonance that belongs to old concrete when someone asks it to hold something besides footsteps. He looks at me afterwards like he swallowed a firefly and it agrees to live with him. "I told the studio," he says on an afternoon when the trees are showing off, "that I want to work remotely for a month. Collaborate, send files, notes, see if the rhythm fits." They were confused and then persuaded. I told them the commute would kill my cat. He winks and unrepents before I can scold him for using Luna as an alibi. I also told them I have something here I want to learn how to play without leaving the room. "What is it?" I ask, though I suspect I know. He gestures at the air between us, the hallway, the radio's absence and presence all at once. "Us," he says simply. "This building, the strange, useful chorus of it. I let myself be the person who hears a compliment without throwing it over my shoulder for someone else to catch. New instrument, I say. Consider me a beginner who likes to practice. We live in our new routine the way people live in water without noticing it. Grateful when it's warm, respectful when it's cold. The hall shows up, 10 o'clock like a ritual that refuses to become a meeting. People come and don't come. Someone who has never said a word brings a loaf of bread on a paper towel and places it on the table like an offering. The hallway smells for 10 minutes like Sundays. A little boy from 2D sits on the floor with his legs splayed and shakes a bag of marbles like an instrument. His mother's apology a low, endless current under him. He becomes our percussion section. The teenager brings a friend, and the friend asks if we accept requests, and we pretend there are rules and then make exceptions on purpose. Someone hangs a small postcard above our sign. If the wires hum back, in M's looping hand that we have decided to share with strangers because generosity makes authors live longer. It's the woman from 3A who says it out loud on a Wednesday. You should take this to the roof. She says it like a person suggesting you move the party outside because the kitchen is too warm. And then she offers to hold the door because she has learned that the shape of a community is whoever is holding something at a hinge. The roof is not glamorous. It's pebbled, fenced, practical. But it has a view the courtyard pretends it doesn't know about. The city hums like an old refrigerator that somehow makes everything cold anyway. The air has opinions, and nobody's taste is offended. We pick a night without wind, or rather a night with wind we can love. We carry the radio like a relic, the lamp like a firefly that condescends to hands. The sign because tradition is how you tell yourself you mean it. The super eyes us suspiciously by the elevator and then opens the door to the stairs without comment because helping while pretending to be annoyed is his love language. We aren't announcing anything monumental. There are no speeches. There is a small cluster of neighbors who learn to be friends by not asking too much at once. There is the radio glowing softly, a dot of intent on a field of practical gravel. Luna patrols a rectangle like she's considering taking a job with the roof as its CEO. Caleb and I place the radio on an upturned milk crate and sit side by side the way people do when they're learning how to share a view. It is not our first time in daylight together, but it is our first broadcast with faces. I am suddenly aware of my shoulders, of the way my hair does something peculiar in wind, of the fact that my laugh is not as pretty as it feels inside me. And then all that falls away, because he looks at me like my face is an address he has not been afraid to write down. Ready? He asks, not for the line, but for this. Us, visible. Yes, I say. I am, in the same way you are ready to step from a curb when the light says walk, and you decide to trust that the waiting cars have somewhere else to be. We don't do a program. We just do what we've been doing, above our heads instead of between our doors. I put on a record I bought that first lonely week, the compilation with the ridiculous cover, because the version of me who purchased it needs to be included in my happy life. The needle finds the groove. The radio glows like a candle that has nothing to prove. The city's hum becomes the bass line. A siren far off harmonizes because it doesn't know how not to. The wind tries to turn a page we haven't written yet and then decides to behave. When the song finishes, no one claps because clapping would be too loud. And besides, this isn't a performance. It's a remembering. We tell a short story. The guy from 1C about the answering machine, condensed and brighter the second time like a postcard. But then the story turns into 3 neighbors telling him they did the same thing, and he looks like someone has just invented a new civic holiday on his behalf. The question is mine because I've always liked swapping places with who asks, "What sound told you you were home this week?" The answers come like a quiet rain, a teapot, a sneaker on a stair, a bicycle bell, the keys again softly, a particular bird complaining at 6 in the morning like it inhales coffee for a living. And then there's just us, no sign-off, no formal ending. The radio breathes its small, attentive breath. The lamp continues to be gentle. The building leans on its elbows. Caleb turns toward me in the way where 2 people have already turned toward each other in so many other ways that this one feels like an afterthought, and also like the whole point of a decade. "I'm staying," he says, without drum rolls, as if he's telling me the weather where he is and asking me if I need an umbrella. "Okay," I say, because my heart can be a firework behind my ribs and my mouth can still be reasonable. "How long?" "Until leaving feels like going towards something, not away," he says. "Until the studio job is a river I can step into without losing this shore. Until Luna learns to forgive Basil completely," he adds, because he knows I'm in love with the part of him that always makes room for humor and explanations. "Then," I say, "I'll make extra tea." He laughs, and I realize we'll be telling this joke to no one in particular for years. Behind us, somebody's chair scrapes softly against gravel. The city keeps humming, indifferent and generous. The radio glows between us like an apology from the past we have accepted and turned into decor. We do not kiss because this is not a movie, and because some firsts prefer the privacy of a hallway or a stairwell or a kitchen where the fridge hum can be enlisted as a chaperone. We do not hold hands because our hands are busy, mine resting on my knee, his drifting toward the dial like habit, like prayer, like a man committed to tending a small fire. We sit and listen to our neighbors talk to each other, introduce themselves by their sounds. I'm the one with the squeaky bike. I'm the person whose laugh echoes. And I think this is it. This is the end and the beginning, the scene you close a book on and leave open in your lap because you want to stay here a minute. When the radio hisses, it's not the bad kind. It's the kind that says the night has arrived with its usual softness. We hum back without telling each other we are going to. Our voices make a note that is too thin to be recorded and too strong to be broken. The hallway below us waits for 10 o'clock tomorrow like a favorite chair left in the sun. The step between floors will still sing if you step on it wrong. The super will still jingle his keys and pretend we are a fire hazard. Perhaps we always will be, two people who learn to set flame to a life quietly, without smoke. I think of the person who wrote the first note, M, who tucked encouragement under radiators and believed in the building's nosy kindness. I wish I could slip a thank you into whatever pocket time kept for them. This is what your invitation made, I would say. We took your party line and turned it into a porch. We stopped being shy with our hellos. We let our city hum under us without drowning us out. Caleb shifts, the tiniest adjustment, and the lamp catches his profile and makes him look like something from a photograph in an album even I haven't seen. He no longer looks like a person living inside a decision. He looks like a person living inside a life. Luna plants herself between us, tail like punctuation, satisfied she has her two humans where she can supervise both without moving her head. Ready? He asks again. But this time it's not for the record or the line or the community or even the decision. It's for the ordinary days, for calendars with groceries written on them, for 18 different kinds of small bravery that will never make it into a song. It's an invitation to do this with the lamps on and the doors open and the inevitable interruptions of laundry and mail and someone needing to borrow sugar. Ready, I say, and I mean it with every frequency I own. We sit there a little longer, not doing anything monumental. Below us, the hallway goes dark on its timer and then bright again because someone opened a door. Across the way, a window flickers blue with a movie that has probably made someone into a person again. The sky over the city looks like velvet that has learned to be kind to fingerprints. The radio glows softly between us, an ember we tend without fuss. We talk side by side, no longer hiding behind walls, answering each other in low voices, discovering what our faces do when they're allowed to belong to our words. When we finally stand, it's not to leave anything behind. It's to carry it downstairs with us. The lamp, the sign, the station that doesn't need a tower, just a table and a time and a willingness. As we descend, the step between 3 and 4 sings. Caleb grins at me like a person who has figured out how to make music in a place that was already singing. I hum back, and somewhere beneath the soles of our shoes and the skin of the building, the wires hum too, modest and faithful, doing what they do best, carrying. Back at my door, the radio is warm in my hands. I set it on my table like a centerpiece, like a proof. Caleb pauses at the threshold. We don't need to say goodnight. It's inside every breath now. The building notices us, its windows and pipes and keys and all, and decides to let us be brave in this simple way. Sometimes I still sit with the lights off. Old habits, old comfort. But even then, it's different. In the dark, I can see the radio's soft orange glow, a quiet planet that found its orbit. I can hear, without turning the dial, the echo of a guitar note caught in a windowsill and the murmur of a hallway turned porch. I can hear the city's tireless refrigerator hum, which I used to resent and now trust. And I can feel, not with my ears, but with the part of me that learned to be patient, the true broadcast of this place, which is not just sound but proof. We are here. We hum back. We carry. That's how it ends then, if endings are just beginnings that learned how to stand. Two people beside a small glowing radio on a rooftop, talking at moth volume while the city breathes below and refuses to be a villain. The lamp small and adequate, the building nosy and kind, the super pretending he doesn't hear our laughter floating down the stairwell like steam. Luna deciding all of this was her idea, and the dial, steady at 92, no longer a hiding place, but a place to meet, a home frequency, a little brave light in a world loud enough to forgive us for being quiet until we were ready to speak. And that ends tonight's meditation. You're welcome to stay for a bit longer if you like. Have a beautiful night. Until next time.